It's Ash from Super Videos back for another video for season 11 of The Walking Dead. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at something that's actually going to likely go beyond season 11 of The Walking Dead and something that's going to involve the whole universe, which has to do with variant walkers being introduced to The Walking Dead universe. Now, of course, if you haven't watched the previous episode of The Walking Dead that aired on AMC Plus, season 11 episode 19, which was called Variant, you might want to do that first before you watch this video. But in this video, I'll be explaining variant walkers that have been introduced, some of the things that I noticed when it comes to the variant walkers, and some things that might hint at what we might potentially see in the future when it comes to these types of walkers. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break it all down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's get right into it. So of course, in the previous episode, 11:19, we got our first glimpse at these variant walkers, who are also known as intelligent or smart walkers, when one of them, who was in the middle of a herd, actually noticed the survivors in the distance. Now, none of the other walkers responded to this, only this particular one, making it different than the others, hence why these are called variant walkers, because not all of the walkers are going to be like that. Now, right off the bat, the first thing that I noticed is that this was a clever Easter egg or a clever way for them to kind of remind us of the Whisper arc again, because much like the Whispers, this walker is acting in a different way. But of course, when it comes to the Whispers, they were people amongst the walkers, but in this case, these are actually walkers. So this was a pretty cool, clever way to kind of show the similarities between the variant walker story and the Whisper story. They did a bit more with that, which I'm going to come back to, but this was our first glimpse at these variant walkers. Now, of course, we do know that there were some variant walkers in season 1 of The Walking Dead as well. One in particular that was trying to break the window by grabbing on a rock, if you remember that. And then another one later on, who was of course Morgan's wife as a walker, turning doorknobs and trying to get in. So we have seen these types of walkers before, but obviously they didn't explain it at that time, and a lot of fans were actually under the assumption that those types of walkers were not really variant walkers or different types of walkers, and that these were just because of decisions made by the original showrunner, which have been different from the showrunners that have come afterwards. But of course, what they just revealed in the latest episode debunks that whole thing, and at this point, we know for sure that those were also variant walkers. Now, one other thing I do want to talk about is this doesn't mean that they originally had this idea of variant walkers. All that means is that they were inspired by that, and they're gonna take advantage of that and kind of explain it away as that was set up. You know what I mean? But obviously, they didn't know at that time that there's gonna be variant walkers. But of course, the other moment where these variant walkers made an appearance is when they actually opened the fences and entered the compound that Aaron, Jerry, Lydia, and Elijah were staying at. Something that regular walkers don't do. Regular walkers can't just open fences and walk in. So that was also something done by the variant walkers. Now, the other thing that's extremely interesting is another moment, which was with Lydia, and I thought that was clever to use Lydia for this, and I'll explain just why in a minute. But we did see that when Lydia was trying to kill this particular walker, the walker grabbed on Lydia's bow staff and kind of pulled it forward and tried to block Lydia. Again, something that regular walkers don't do. This obviously took Lydia off guard, and she didn't really know how to handle it because obviously she hasn't seen anything like that before. Now, one clever thing that they did is this is a direct nod or an Easter egg at what happened with the introduction of the Whispers themselves, because we did see one of the Whispers who was amongst the walkers, dodged a hit from Jesus and actually turned around and killed him. And that was the first introduction of the Whispers. So what they did with this variant walker was definitely a nod at that, and it was a cool way to reflect back on a similar story that happened. And this is what I was talking about. Having Lydia go through this was clever because she used to be a whisperer. So I thought that was pretty clever. And also another layer that gets added in is that because of Lydia's knowledge of tactics that the Whisperers used, she was able to actually handle this walker likely better than maybe someone else in her position. Now, the other aspect of it, and this goes back to what I was saying about the Whispers, the survivors didn't immediately buy into that whole thing about these being clever walkers or intelligent walkers. What they ended up assuming is that these are just Whispers who are amongst the walkers. And that actually comes back around later on with Aaron, which I'll get to in a minute. But obviously after the survivors handle this particular variant walker, they run off and they actually go into a particular house and close the door. But obviously we do see that, again, these variant walkers are intelligent because they turn the doorknob and they try to enter. But again, at this point, they don't immediately jump to these are smart walkers. They still think that these are Whispers who are amongst the walkers. And then later on, when the survivors climb to the roof and stay there, we do see another instance of something that the variant walkers are able to do, which is climb. Something that Aaron actually talked about. He said, I always heard stories about walkers that can climb walls, that can open doors, things like that. I always thought that these were just stories, but obviously now we are seeing that these are not just stories. But we do also see that walker grabbing on a rock. So obviously this is another aspect of the variant walkers, which is unlike anything we've seen with the original walkers or the regular walkers. Now, this is also a direct callback to season 1 of The Walking Dead, where we had the walkers grabbing on rocks and trying to break the glass. So that was another kind of callback or Easter egg to that. When Aaron comes back and kills this walker, we do see him trying to take off the mask of the walker, thinking that it's a whisper mask, thinking that this is a whisper. But obviously he comes across just a regular walker. So this is our clear reveal that these are not just whispers. These are not just any regular types of people. These are walkers, and these are variant walkers. Now there's a few ways that this could go. Either this could be an isolated story just for season 11 of The Walking Dead, which I feel would be underwhelming, and I feel like for as big as this story is, they wouldn't just end it here. They're likely going to bring this back around at some point. Now, how can they bring this back? There's two ways. One is that they could bring it back in the Daryl Dixon spinoff. And the reason why I say that is because we do know Daryl is going to end up in France. And obviously, based on the events of The Walking Dead World Beyond, we know a bit of what's going on in France. We do know there are fast zombies in France, and that goes back to what Dr. Edwin Jenner was actually saying in the recording that we saw in World Beyond. He was talking about variant walkers. So maybe some of these variants, they can climb walls and open doors and things like that, and the other variants are walkers that can run. Or maybe these are the same types of walkers. It's also possible that the same types of walkers that can run or fast zombies are the ones that are intelligent, but we don't know that for sure. We obviously didn't see that in 11:19, so it's likely that those two things are completely separate. But the point is that this story with the clever or intelligent walkers might come back around at some point in the Daryl spinoff as well. The other way it could go is that they could tie the story with the clever walkers in with the Civic Republic military story, and we could see something along the lines of these clever variant walkers being created by the CRM or something to that effect, where obviously Rick Grimes himself can come into the picture and kind of be involved in that story when it comes back around. But at the end of the day, I feel like we're definitely gonna see something with the clever variant walkers at some point later after season 11. Yes, I do think we're gonna see them again in season 11, but I think that they're not gonna be dealt with. I think that these clever variant walkers are going to be coming back into the story later on in one of the spin-offs, and they're going to be handled in one of the spin-offs. And what I mean by handled is that their story is going to come to a conclusion in one of the spin-offs. Now, with all of that out of the way, what are my thoughts about the variant walkers? Well, short answer is I think it's awesome, and I think it's something that is cool to see in the Walking Dead universe, and this obviously increases the intensity of some of the stories because we're not just dealing with regular walkers anymore, and because of that it adds a layer to the story that we haven't seen before. But at the same time, this might be a personal thing, but I feel like variant walkers had no place in the Walking Dead universe, and I feel like they're just overcrowding the story in a way with all of these different variants and with all of these stories like CRM, Padre, and all of that. You know what I mean? So I feel like there's too much going on, too many things that are isolated. You know what I mean? Like, it's impossible that we haven't seen these variant walkers before at all. You know what I mean? Like, how can that be? Same thing with Padre from Fear the Walking Dead. Stories like that I feel are isolated, and when you're dealing with big stories and big universes like this, it just doesn't quite work, and you can't really buy it as being realistic. You know what I mean? Now, it's obviously possible that they can explain all of that away and kind of tell us exactly why we haven't seen these walkers before, but it's going to be tricky for them to pull off. That's all I'm saying. But that's everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.